I think we have a responsibility not to serve just wine, but also to serve up such interesting and platform for creating such interesting ideas, exchanges, and showcasing the finer aspects of life, if I may say that, not just the food and beverage. Mr. Khanna and I have, if I may take the liberty of saying, developed a friendship over the last few years. I've been seeing him in the lobby and I've been meeting him as a guest of the hotel. And being a general manager of a hotel, you normally have an interaction which is about a very transactional interaction, and we talk about how the experience was of the guest, etc. And one day he mentioned that he's writing a book. Not too many of our corporate honchos do that. And suddenly he says, I'm writing a book. And I said, well, that's interesting. And when he told me the topic, I said, well, that sounds really exciting. And something which is very interesting. But he was very kind. He showed me he was one of the first few people to see the book in its final avatar. And I said, we must put together an evening to celebrate the book. So I think that's what we're doing today. I'm told the book has already become a success, and that's great to know. And I believe he's already spoken at the Literature Festival, the Times Lit Fest. So this is more not a launch, but this is a celebration of his book. And we wanted to thank you, Mr. Khanna, for partnering with us, giving us this opportunity, and of course for your patronage over the years, but giving us an opportunity to have an evening like this, so diverse from what we normally do in hotels. Thank you all for being here this evening, and look forward to the evening. Thank you. Sorry, may I invite Mr. Venkataraman on stage, please? President of the Forum.
Friends, before I say anything, I wish to invite Rahul Singh, who is going to be conducting the basic conversation with Atul Khanna. Yeah. Please do come and take the stage, Rahul and Atul. I have known Rahul for many years, and I happened to meet Atul only 2 weeks ago. But a friend of mine, Francois Gauthier, sent a message to me saying that he knows Atul and he has just done a book, and would the FCC be interested in having him over. And so we got in touch with each other, and he sent me a copy of the book. I found it very interesting. I said, yeah, why not? So the option was between FCC auditorium or the Taj. So he suggested, let's do it at the Taj, because Satyajit has graciously invited us to have the event at the Taj. I said, fine. And that's how we are here. This is the first time that an FCC event is being conducted here in collaboration with the Taj Mahal Hotel, Bloomsbury. And this is the first book Atul Khanna has done. Atul is basically a risk-taking entrepreneur, makes most of his money abroad, but loves to live in Pune with his family. Rahul, as you know, is a veteran journalist, educated at Cambridge. He edited Reader's Digest and several other newspapers. He was with the Times of India and so on. So without wasting any more time, I want to invite Mr. Bedi, Managing Director of Bloomsbury, the publishers of the book, to come and say a few words.
We like to say that a book like this has never been published. We don't happen to say it too often, because that doesn't happen too often either. But I think with this book, I can safely say a book like this has never been published. I think if you read the book, what strikes you is how can anyone think of writing such a book? Because the kind of canvas it covers, the ideas it comes up with, it talks about some issues and areas which are so close to India. And if you listen to politicians and others, they talk about a new India, they talk about many things. They try to show that there are a lot of things that can happen. But if you read Atul's book, you really find what New India can be about. And as he passionately says, this is for the 600 million youngsters. You know, what we've been or been through, they shouldn't. They should look at a real New India. So he got massive amount of ideas, some solutions which I think some people might call audacious, and definitely radical. So he talks about, let's say in the electoral system, he talks about single transferable vote. He says voting should not be linked to population power. He says, why do we need the Rajya Sabha? He says there should be a new constituent assembly. And he covers everything. He covers education, science, governance, administration, democracy, the whole gamut. And aptly, he ends with a chapter which suggests a new preamble to the Constitution. So you can imagine how radical this book is. So I would say the purpose of him writing the book and us publishing the book would really be met if two things happen. One is that youngsters read it, because to a great extent it's meant to just make them think of an India which could be totally different. And number two, I hope it comes to the attention of certain policymakers, bureaucrats, and politicians, because there might be some things, there are a lot of radical things, I'm sure a lot of things they'll say, oh, this just can't happen. But if they have an open mind, there are chances that there could be some real good things that could happen. And then we could really have a true New India. So I thank Atul a lot for publishing with us. As I said, again I'll repeat, we really haven't published a book of this kind before. So I had to look at it very carefully to make sure that there weren't content in it which could really make some people upset. So thanks a lot for publishing with us. Thank you very much. I look forward to a great evening. Thank you.
Atul, you don't have to worry about the publisher for your next two books, okay? So for the sake of record, we need to have a picture with all the three of us standing and holding the book. Bear with me.
Sir, I request you to come.
Please come. So here we are, Rahul. It's your show now.
Okay. Yes, that's you. Is it on? Yes, it is on. Okay. I hope you can all hear me. Yeah?
Yes, we can, sir.
Yeah, okay, fine. I have met Atul only a short while ago. I think a couple of months ago, a mutual friend of ours told me about him, and I mentioned that we are having a literary festival in Kasauli. We have every year a Kushwant Singh Literary Festival there. And I said, you're welcome to come there. And he turned up there. Atul, as I began to realize very quickly, is the kind of person who you take to immediately. And I took to him immediately because he's full of ideas and he's a very unusual personality. I dipped into his book, which he gave me then, and then again, in the last 3 days I've been reading it. I don't agree with some of what he's written there, but I agree with a lot of what he says there. He covers a vast arena, so I can't go through all of it with you because we don't have enough time. But what I'm going to do is to ask him a few questions and a few points that I observed there, and he'll sort of take it from there. But I would just like to say that he's basically an entrepreneur. He built enterprises in manufacturing, engineering, and life sciences, and also built, this sounds to me very interesting, an Indo-European education corridor, and has also designed German cars. Very unusual mixture of things. About the Indo-European education corridor, I'll ask him later, because I think the two obsessions with him, one is of course changing the constitution, the other two is that we should spend and emphasize much more on health and education, the two areas which we have failed abysmally compared to a lot of other developing countries. So I'll start from asking him, well, the first part of the book is very critical of Nehru. Now, I happen to be an admirer of Nehru. He ends off that bit on Nehru by saying, to me, Nehru doesn't add up. And he mentions about how Nehru's economic policies, were all wrong and all that. But I'd like to say to him that in hindsight, he might have been wrong. But at that time, all the major countries that I can think of, followed the same kind of policies of having a large public sector, and being very suspicious of the private sector. But Nehru sort of continued with that. Now, I'd like to ask Atul, why does he think that Nehru was a failure?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Big honor for my family and me, and honor also to be asked questions by two great opinion leaders of India. My book is not about Nehru. My book is about ideas of the 19th century were adopted in India by the same, which were developed in another continent, were developed in the 20th century for India by those influenced by that continent and are unfit for 21st century, where we have one of the greatest phenomena planet Earth has never seen, that is 600 million under 25 years. So this is a country that no longer needs precedents. This is a country that needs to evolve in innovation on its own. I have written one page about all the great leaders to make a simple point. And the simple point I'm making is that if your structure is of an ambassador car, it really doesn't matter who your driver is. Your journey will be between 19 feet. And I have not agreed, and I don't even dispute the greatness of all past leaders. I just said that, be that as it may, I use these leaders because we are so personality obsessed as a nation. Even today, if you see 99% of the media discourse is around leaders, that I just wanted to dive into structure. And you can't dive into changing the constitution without walking the reader through familiar gardens and softening those gardens. So I don't want to make this book about Pandit Nehru or about any great stalwart. I only want to say that if the structure was there, there is a reason why for 70 years so many great leaders have not taken India to its destiny. And the reason is structure. So I actually asked the country to lose or leave behind its obsession for leaders to solve problems and focus on structure. It's a very personal book. It's not a I in my personal life also don't hit on personalities, I hit on issues. So I don't want to make this book about Pandit Nehru, I want to make this book about structure, because even if you see the current elections going on, it's all about A versus B, and A and B are changing in every state, but the essential experience to the citizen is largely the same.
Yeah. Now, there's a very nice quote which I've got here from your book. We don't have a new car, but we have a new driver, which means Narendra Modi. And then you also talk about, I think you mentioned it over and over again, and I think you're absolutely right. You talk about the 600 million young people in this country. And then you're very harsh on what you call the unaccountable bureaucracy. Now, tell us something about the new driver that we've got now here, the 600 million people that you feel have to be addressed, and of course, on the unaccountable bureaucracy. These 3 points.
Let's start with the third. I have some very close friends in the bureaucracy, and almost all of them are brighter than me. But even the best of them will tell you, and as I've written in the book, that 50% of them are not quite there. Now, in today's factories, rejection rates are parts per million. Not 1%, 2%. So if you're at 50%, this is the problem that you have. It goes back to the Constitution. There is a Section 311. I haven't even mentioned there is Section 311. I think in one lifetime, a man or a woman should serve on both sides of the table. It gives you a lot of perspective. If you are on one side of the table, based on an exam that you passed at a very young age, and on that basis go up 40 years, howsoever bright you may be, a competitive edge will be within you. Because today we are in a world where under 30s are creating billion-euro companies. So it is again not on the person. Those guys pass exams, then I can't pass the entrance also. My second problem with that structure is I'm a late bloomer. The only promise my father asked me was, I won't pay your fees twice, and I obliged. But in a bureaucratic setup, it's how you rise academically at the age of 23. And lastly, it's a country that doesn't make products. 2,000 years ago, 30% was our share of world trade. Today it is 0.3. So again, it's not personal. And all this is because you are creating universities, coaching classes for what? Not to create entrepreneurs, but to create permanent bureaucracies. So I think almost all people in India at some point in their life could come on this side of the table. And these people who came on this side of the table first, if they went to that side of the table, I think they will rock. I am actually being their friend by saying that come on both sides of the table. And in general, if 99% of the population of a country is on a contract employment, I think there should not be 1% who should not be on that contract employment. I prefer the German way, where there is one employment law. It's a certain fairness is needed, because my dream is social equity with entrepreneurship. I think we are intrinsically a country of entrepreneurs. From the lady who sells fish to the lady who sells vegetables, and you can't make this a country of technicians.
Talking about the bureaucracy again, you advocate lateral entry into the bureaucracy. Is that one of the solutions to, because the bureaucracy there, whether you like it or not, how can we improve it? Can lateral entry help?
That's not my center point. There are so many experts who have analyzed bureaucracy. I am not one of those experts. I am making a simple point that if you have a 5% lateral entry and a 95% permanence, it's not going to make that much difference. It's just going to be tweaking. In our times, there used to be ambassador. When I was in class 7, there was ambassador. When I was in class 9, it was ambassador Mark 2. When I went to college, there was ambassador Mark 3. And then when I passed out of college, there was ambassador Mark 4. Did it make a difference?
Even worse.
So I am talking at another level. I am talking of a national employment where all citizens at all ages can come on either side. And I am saying these bright guys should come on both sides of the table. The country will rock because they are damn good. I am not a critic. I am not a personal critic. But I am a structural critic. I think once you are guaranteed sinecure for life, that fire is not there.
Now, let's get to the heart of your book, which you say that we need a structural change in our constitution. I think that is the real basis of what you're saying. You need a new model. Tell me what have you got in mind?
My most original, foolish, radical, silly, stupid, brilliant, or ahead of its time solution. And we'll discuss one because cocktails are also nice and the evening is not the longest. Is the transferable vote. Read the paper today. So and so is a rebel candidate, so and so is a disgruntled candidate. It means that you are entering into politics and your continuation in politics is dependent on a party boss. So how do you shift in a democracy? It should be about the people. So how do you begin the recalibration back to people? Second, it's based on negative voting, a wasted vote. You are likely to vote for Atul Khanna, you pitch Rahul Singh, you divide, you manipulate. You think so and so is winning, you waste their votes, and then with arrogance say, don't waste your vote. Worry about the stability of the state or the nation. And all in all, the whole power goes away from the constitution to party bosses and you come into master-slave political parties. And I am saying that a politician is a damn nice guy. But his equation with the people is no longer direct. It's via the party boss who is not controlled by the constitution. And these master-slave parties are universal. Now imagine if you had transferable vote.
But when you say transferable...
You have a very great politician here, Mr. Anand Singh, you like him, you vote for him first. Then you like Anil Khanna, you vote for him second. My point is, it's a precondition that there are going to be very many wise guys. And whoever gets the aggregate is the guy you win. So what happens is that the man begins to look to the people because the electorate is not threatened by a wasted vote. Why should I have a wasted vote 1 in 5 years at that?
No, but
I put 1, 2, 3, 4, preference 5, you put yours and then whoever wins.
Can I interject here? You say in your book that supposing parents have one child, they're entitled to one vote. If somebody has 5 children, they're also entitled to only one vote. So you're questioning the whole basis of adult franchise, aren't you?
I am questioning because I am worried. The computers, when they came, they used to occupy a building. And people used to say, yaar, Ganit sikho, I can count on my fingers faster. I don't have perfect solutions. I am challenging difficult problems. In the way, all through my book I say, I invite you to come up with a better solution. I only want you to jump out of the 19th century box because you are in the 21st century. Don't bother whether Atul Khanna's solution is wise, but begin to see that don't accept these problems as a fact of life. Number one. So, my one worry is that 40 crores at 47 in an undivided India is today 160 crores. It is the greatest population increase in the history of mankind. And adult franchise was picked up from UK, where there are 1,000 other invisible forces which are towards sanity. And within those invisible forces in society, you pick up adult franchise and park it. Many people say, yaar, uneducated poor people, inke saath kya karna? According to me, that's not my game. According to me, man in Mercedes and man on the road in India thinks within 1 degree of each other. So I don't think India's problem is an uneducated vote or educated vote. I'm not on that. I have the feeling that we are growing our numbers to great political power. They were, I don't want to take a name of it, there was a community X and they are 1 and they become 10. and they wanted to build the nation, give their children education. Don't you have flats which you, if you have 2 children, you give it them 2 each. If you have 10 children, you give them 1/10 each. So I'm making electric adult franchise a property. And I say 1955 ke census go, freeze it, because to be above it, they were more poor then than are today. So it's not about poor rich, it's not about religion. But I want those who contain themselves and have fewer children to not be disadvantaged politically against those who have more children.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
But I think that's something which I agree with you entirely. I think that's something which would not be politically acceptable. I don't think you could sell that idea to the country.
If you see a major one of India's top 3 magazines today, they have taken only this idea from my book and banned me.
Okay, now let me go to something else which I think you will find it very difficult to get politically acceptable. I'll just read the quote from your book. I petition that the Hindu Marriage Act be declared void and unconstitutional. Because you're arguing for a common law, aren't you? Yeah. So please argue why the Hindu Marriage Act should be declared void and unconstitutional.
One country, one people. I'm not on uniform civil code at all.
But that's a uniform civil code. One country, one people is that, isn't it? What about Muslim personal law?
I am first saying that there is an unwritten religion and there is a written religion. Are you telling me that the British Constitution is not a constitution because it is unwritten? So first I am saying, with what authority are you challenging one set of personal laws and not the other? An unwritten personal law is not a personal law. I don't think this country will pass a religion-based act again. So rather than, and I also think social dialogue is a matter of social contract. People who go, our constitution gives too much power to elected actors who are elected for governance but have too much control on social laws. So first I say, whenever I see a toxic situation in life, I don't address the issue at hand. This is partly the reason I'm able to live despite very limited intellect. I first cause the heat to go down. Then I remove toxicity from the situation. So first I am saying that, you've given one guy, first I said, okay, you're not ready for uniform, one people, one act. First you've created one based on an unwritten religion, some act. Take it out of the way. You can't be doing this. You can't have a Parsi act, you can't have a Hindu act, you can't have 50 acts. These are social contracts. People are quite capable of dealing with them. I am just objecting to the ease with which you can just pick up and pass a social edict. I'm at another point altogether. I actually see a very small role in social matters. In social matters, elected people should be franking machines. Whereas today, the matters have gone so presidential that the political people are franking machines. So I would like political tigers. I think this country would do very, very well if this country got political tigers. I don't know why there is hate for a politician. They are most humble, most practical, and despite all that you might say, it's the constitution that forgot to finance its democracy. Why is this holy and they crooks? They are very nice guys. So The whole basis of my book, whether it's bureaucracy, political structure, is that if you create dirty drains, you'll get dirty water. But essentially, very good water goes into them. So I look at structure. I look at structure because I think societies are built by average people building extraordinary results, and that's why I have 9 petitions, and that's why I have a thick book.
Super, sir.
Okay, let me go to another point where I entirely agree with you. You said abolish caste or caste-based promotions. Now what about reservations? Are you for reservations? You said abolish caste or caste-based promotion. So the logical conclusion of that is that we must abolish reservations for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. No?
No. I have a different mindset. I don't touch toxic situations. I don't touch situations I don't understand. And I feel pain. When I go as a brown-skinned man to Europe and try and build technology, if I migrate to Europe, there is no problem. Then you get accepted over 10 years as one of them. But from India, I know what is discrimination. I know what it is to work 10 times harder for 1/10 the income. 25 years later, I feel it daily. This is skip 1 meal a day. It's good for health. But I am saying blow up capacities. You need to educate 100 million children, create capacity for 150 million. We are so used to planning in shortages that we just don't realize anymore the concept of abundance. And abundance is cheaper than shortages. Because we want this daily power, iski file sign karo, iska file ye karo, iska ye karo, uska wo karo. I am looking at fairness in the structure. And the only way to do that is if you create abundant quality. Forget shortages in India. You should have a situation where people from the world want to come and learn in India. And the day you have this situation, you won't have to touch these difficult topics. We always, I'm an accountant's son. I have senior accountants in the family. I only have seen a balance sheet and I've never seen a balance sheet without assets and liabilities. Now you want to poke the liabilities or you want to poke the assets? As an entrepreneur, I poke the assets to see which asset will reduce my liability and increase my net worth. So focus on increasing the quantum. And if everybody has more than one, then whether there is a reservation or not reservation will mean much less. We are not programmed to think in abundance.
Okay. Let me now go to another big issue, corruption. You say a lot about that in your book. I'm going to mention just the Lokpal or Ombudsman. Now you've called it a terrible institution has been established. The Lokpal you call a terrible institution that's been established. What is the alternative?
आप सबके पास insurance policy है? When you are 25, your premium is low. When you are 50, your premium is high.
75.
Okay. So in 1990, when I was a young factory owner, to my good luck, India liberalized. And whom you knew did not seem to matter. It still mattered, but for 5 years, those factories are shut. But how competitive the factory was, the word used to be, don't inspect quality, manufacture quality. Now you have changed nothing in the structure and added one more auditor. If I was a peaceful, permanently employed guy who came in with the nicest dreams in the world, with the cleanest heart, and I had these 7 people who could not reward me if I did well, and I did 100 good things in my life, and one guy would pick episodically one thing that I made a mistake. You know, the whole desire to go would go. This is if I'm honest. If I'm dishonest, I'll tell you, boss, this is a new act I have to fight against. the corruption premium is higher. We can't keep creating inspection and distrust. We have to clean up manufacture quality. You take local, you have CVC, you have audit, you have this, you create one more, means nothing. Go to Ordnance Factory, Calcutta. It makes a rifle that no Jawan wants. There's 19 inspection centers. You pick it up like that, no, your shoulder goes like that. 93% is therefore important. So I always talk in nowadays everything is interrelated. Education relates science, science relates industry, industry relates services, services relate how the country is administered, how a country is administered relates to mindsets. And mindsets change because of your experience on both sides of the table. There's nothing personal about what I'm doing.
Well said. Absolutely, sir. Very good.
Now let's get to one issue which is a big issue these days, jobs. This government has failed in its promises to create more jobs. And from what I've been told just now from the exit polls, they are paying for it in the coming state elections. Tell me, you talk a lot about creating more jobs. And you mentioned somewhere, I think, that one government job could have been converted into 10 really good jobs which would have benefited the economy. Tell us a little more about your solution to the job crisis. You mentioned skills. Developing skills.
I end my chapter by imagine growth and 20 million jobs.
Yeah.
I talk in the beginning of 600 million people. Do I have a band? No. I can give you 4 or 5 viewpoints. Stop this battery of creating at different levels bureaucrats, start working with entrepreneurs. If you are going to if you are not going to see risk, you are not going to be able to manage that risk in society. The second big area that I see is go for value added. How do you go for value added? I give you one example. This is nothing to do with bureaucracy. I jump to judiciary or jump wherever. We are auctioning minerals. Typically, and then that mineral, you create an inefficient factory, and because you've got hold of that mineral, worse, by bidding high, that means the rich get richer, you are just creating a commodity product. And you're making a lot of money, but a lot of money relative to your neighbor, not relative to how much a producer abroad is making. Put one mine and say 5 of you put up a factory. Value added will start rising. Technology will get. The idea is rather than circle the resource, you have to make the resource available and let the guy who can sell it for the highest price. That's where technology comes in, value added comes in, and this is how jobs come. It is DGOF factories, if they are not going to give you 93%, if you are not going to bring down that import bill, how will jobs come? If you are not going to export railway wagons and let China dominate all of Africa, and nobody is all our railway factories were created before China created the first railway. Same with BHEL, same. So if you are going to start disappearing from the world, how will jobs come? So the issue is you have to start appearing in the world. So the goal becomes how to make 0.3 into 30. It may be a 300-year journey. And then go step by step by step. Where are your assets? How are they managed? How are they optimized? And you will very quickly come that you are shackled by the Constitution after 3 questions. It is so prescriptive. Indian culture is not a prescriptive culture. Brahminical cultures are prescriptive, and today they are much more open. We have reached a level where the innovation of man is at the feet of the hyper-literal. I mean, you have the liberty as a public sector manager to buy what you want. But there are 6 articles written on how you should do it. Now tell me which public sector manager is going to write a note challenging the constitution before he does what he thinks he has to do. So, you dumb it down. Trust has to be manufactured. With trust comes innovation. With that comes, for that prescription has to go. You can't tell your daughter you can't do this. You bring her up well and say, darling, go conquer the world. That's trust.
Two more questions before I throw it open to the audience, because I'm sure they might have got other questions to ask you. But before those 2 questions, I want to take issue with you because you make a very strange statement here, which I think Mr. Macron of Monsieur Macron of France will not be very happy with. And you say that marriage between 2 partners cannot exceed 10 years. Now, Monsieur Macron, whose wife I think is about 25 years older than him,
my marriage would dissolve. So,
so
you are quoting me wrongly.
No, your exact quote is age gap between partners cannot exceed 10 years.
There is one more word after the comma which you are not saying. Until you are the age of 30. After 30, do what you
But I think that's going to grab a lot of eyeballs.
So you have to make a book. It's a conversation between you and me. That's the title of my book.
Okay, let me now come to the 2 more important questions. Now you talked about education and healthcare being your 2 major concerns. Now I want to ask you, how do you move public sector from dead returns, which is what we've been getting in the economy, to live returns in health and education? I think this is a very fundamental question which I don't think any government, Congress or BJP, has really tackled.
They're not tackled because of the power that goes with controlling them. Air India is a beautiful airline. It has the best business class. It's equal to many airlines' first class flight. There's nothing wrong with the airline, and everything that is wrong is intended to be wrong. And not till today, since the last 40 years. It's just, a public sector company in India is more private than a private limited company. A sole proprietor talks more to the stakeholders than a public sector company. And all our, you asked about Pandit Nehru and my problem, all our assets for which generations have gone without education and healthcare are in dead economic sector. And we are asking 3-year-old children to pass entrance exams to come into school. I am knighted by the Finnish government, and that country has the best education system. Copy. You make an education universal and make it elitist after PhD. So you have to drive this money there. 3 public sector companies can, by the way, achieve this. So you're talking of 20 lakh crores stuck. This, what I described to you, needs less than 2 lakh crores. Now the trouble is, one government says, ek ko becho, do ko becho. I follow an accountant's principle that if people are the owners, then there is no profit or loss. All these companies you give it to, create a people sector in the economy and give it 100 shares to every citizen of India. You can buy, sell, give. So first of all, if you have undervalued, it's between us. If you have overvalued, it is between us. And now the same managing director or general manager stands before 3 million, 10 million shareholders instead of one joint secretary. The results will be dramatic.
Agreed.
Dramatic. That man is good. Every man is good. It's the dirty pipe. मेरे को तो सब अच्छे लगते हैं. I have not met one chor chakka in my life.
Structure is what does you in, right?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you entirely that these two areas, education, healthcare, could be financed entirely by failed public sector, pumping in so much money. Air India is a very good example. Now, your take.
In my book, I've described how the unit is killed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's boring, but anecdotally I've described it.
Yeah.
You know, the difference between my book and a general lecture is that I'm on the solution. In a talk, I'm giving you a bird's eye view of the book, but if you should choose to read the book, it's about actually how it goes and actually how it can come back, triggering a solution. Because lament, bahut ho gaya. With the result that my solutions are being called radical, but nobody is calling the problem radical.
Okay, Atul, the last question before we go to the audience. Your take, you're somebody who has started enterprises abroad, you've done things in India, your take on globalization. What's been your experience of globalization?
They came and created an interdependent story, but essentially they were looking for our markets. To their shock and horror, super bright guys like Lakshmi Mittal were born and idiots like Atul Khanna were born, but we turned up over there. And we stood there and said, hi, I'm Atul Khanna, I want to design a BMW car, and I went to Helsinki and I want to design a Saab aircraft and a Saab car, and I went to Helsinki and I said, I want to design drugs for the poor. So sometimes it was all right. As you got bigger, they thought he'd do services, he'd connect us with India, and it gets bigger. Prejudice hits back. Globalization, I have a long chapter. I discuss Maruti, I discuss Nokia, Vodafone, because you are better known to them. I take you into some stories. Globalization is not a theoretical area, it's a practitioner's area. It cannot be built by those who have never done business. It needs a B2B dialogue on both sides. And there definitely is need for a globalization code. I say globalization because German courts will never entertain and openly will never entertain an Indian complaint.
Indian what? Indian
Complaint.
Complaint.
There is such a thing as a white man's court. So, if you are going to go in Finnish law, German law, by the way, unlike us who entertain only in English, they entertain only in German. So if your email exchange is also in German or Finnish, they'll tell you all, whatever is your dispute, translate it all into German, Finnish. Pehle to 50,000 euros in translation. So all this will only work if we have a globalization code. That's why you get a Brexit. Nobody has a problem with European Union, they are friends. But it has not worked anywhere. It's very important for globalization to work. India needs it. We can't go into our gap. As I write in the book, a guy like me, for all my complaints, because my complaints are constructive, I would be a pauper, a clerk at 5,000 rupees a month if I had to only live in India for the choices I made. So integrating with the world is to India's advantage, but it needs a new constitution, a business constitution, a B2B debate. It needs to go out of theoreticians. Because our entire employment, our entire future is based on integrating with the world and building that 0.32. We are 17% of the world population, so at least 17% of world trade. At a 50-year goal, and you are the world's best economy.
Okay,
You need to give this lecture to Trump in Washington.
Okay, one last question before again
You will get me there.
I put it to the audience. You have said agriculture is in fact the most heavily taxed in India. Everyone thinks that agriculture is not taxed at all. But you say it's the most heavily taxed in India. Please explain that.
A very long answer. I'm glad you are listening to me as long as you are. First of all, agriculture doesn't have a political or administrative voice. All your UPSC is based on exams, so there is no room for a practitioner to enter. They have no power. They are ruled by proxy. They are represented by proxy. Your constitution doesn't finance, so they can't enter politics. So everyone is pro-farmer without being a farmer. You have created a serious economic crisis, which actually, and you have created these public sector companies which have no export worth, and you have beautiful fruits and bananas, and you have nobody to exploit it. So this is a form of taxation. When you cut short the potential of a whole sector, I'm just giving a short answer, and prop up the potential of a dead sector, the one that is being shut down is being taxed. It has no political voice, administrative voice, no research voice. Just income tax is very one tiny part of it. Its inputs are controlled by very difficult instruments that may not even work. Its seeds are controlled by factories which may not even be making good seeds. Its chemicals, its inputs. You have a metro in Delhi, it doesn't have any supply chain. It's tough. There's no market intelligence. These are all forms of taxation. Good.
Now, I'd like to ask you this. There are two friends of mine who are former senior bureaucrats, because we've been talking about
One
bureaucracy.
current boss over here, two of my friends are also here.
Well, the two friends of mine who are former bureaucrats, one is Robin Gupta, somewhere around there, and one is...
He's gone out.
He's gone out, okay. And Prabhu Ghate, is he gone out also? No, another senior former bureaucrat, and Asian Development Bank. Maybe they've got some question. And we got a very senior journalist, Prem Shankar Jha here, who might also have some questions to ask. But I'm throwing it now open to the audience to ask Atul. We got lots of raised hands. Prabhu is one. Come on, Prabhu.
Yeah, the conference flowing.
Is there a microphone around there?
Prabhu, yeah. Can we send a microphone?
I agree with you entirely about the bureaucracy. It's ridiculous. But the problem in India is you don't have any better way of selecting people. Anyway, you're stuck with a bureaucracy that is unproductive, dysfunctional by and large. There's some very, very good people, but as a system, it's lousy.
I'm not on people.
But I don't hear any solutions from you. Rahul tried to suggest a solution. Which
I have put
Lateral entry.
But he didn't respond to that. And
I just said 595 won't work.
Every country needs a bureaucracy. You can't do without it. Okay, minimize it, make it much smaller. I agree entirely. It's unproductive.
Because
that's a cop-out to say that
everybody gets a 10-year contract, and then you go to the other side.
Yeah, sure, Mao tried it. He sent everyone out into the countryside. But look at the chaos it's created. These things are very... No, I agree entirely. We should all spend years and years in the villages mucking around on the other side of the...
No, don't go to the villages. Just go abroad, come to the other side, start selling tools, Just take a job on the other side.
Exactly.
No, what he says that become an entrepreneur.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying
Some of
go to
your
the
solutions are like the Constitution. You said nothing that says anything about the I don't think that's
Sir, how much time, how many questions? May I invite you to read the book? I actually have 9 specific petitions addressing, I'll go into them.
Yeah, he's addressing
How to do
to the Supreme
power,
Court.
how to do financial protection, exactly what to be changed and why, how to abolish and how to recraft, how to empower and make the elected not a franking machine but true power, limitations of power and sunset of laws, how to bring in a doctrine of common sense and it's just wrong. Today, if you can't find a section that the British didn't write 150 years ago, you don't know how to imprison a guy. So I'm asking.
Lots of questions. The lady there.
Yeah, hi, I am Archana. Thanks, I'm glad that I could make it today. And your suggestions are really good. Have you tried, because I saw Delhi government is inviting people with these type of ideas, what you have. One thing. Second thing is, like you said, for bureaucracy, yes, at the age of 40, they should be removed from the job. And then if they have to come back, they have to come back through competition again, or through competitive selection. So that they remain up to their toes and their brain is
First of all, the
continuously challenged.
whole focus is bureaucracy because of the whole UPSC system and jobs and government put the jobs out. We need beautiful bureaucrats, and days are gone that to contribute to society you have to plod 40 years. Just allow, show your brilliance.
At the age of 40, that is almost 10 years.
So, you're again into specifics. According to me, you can come in at 40 and do a bright job at 60.
As they do in the US.
Great.
So no.
That is also there, but it has to be limited, not lifelong.
Okay, can we talk and break up the session and keep
Atul, I quite like your idea about having entrepreneurs on the other side of the table. But what I'm wondering is that we do have an entrepreneur in the world who's on the other side of the table, and he seems to be doing some good work in the US. Trump is an entrepreneur. Why is he being so vilified?
I'm not on personalities, ma'am. There are so many people capable of answering that. My biggest thing is that I don't look for one messiah, one godfather. I look for how to make average people produce extraordinary results.
No, so
I look for daily grind. I'm a boring guy. If I don't produce output on a daily basis, I don't get paid. Book I write once in 5 years. This I've written first after so many 30 years of work. So I can't answer questions from Trump. I don't know America. Last flight was 8 years ago.
So if it is not about personalities, is it that you also need to project it better? The optics have to be better?
It's only one question each. You can go on.
Atul, I want to first of all congratulate you on raising questions and and actually expressing the anguish of people about the way that nothing, with a lot of all the talent in the world in India, nothing is fitting together. All the pieces are apart. I don't think that many of the things you suggested, and I have to read the book to be sure, are doable because there's a question of power. But there's one point you made that I think is extremely important, which I want to emphasize, and I want to give you some figures on it because I worked on it a long time ago. Rahul, when we were in the Times of India, shortly after you left, when I was writing economic columns, one of the things I did was I said if there were fewer people being taken into the government every year, and what would be saved, and how much more employment would be able to create with that. Here are the figures that I got. One job in industry at that time cost 3.2 times as much as creating a new job in government.
That's what he
mentioned. The difference is that you had to pay the same amount or more for 35 years for the same job. That's the salary. No, any time, any salary Any government person, you hire him at whatever salary, he'll end up at whatever lakhs. But you have to pay 35 years and you don't create a second job. But in industry, you would produce 1/3 as many jobs with the same amount of work in the first year. You'd add another 1/3 in the second year, another 1/3 in the third year. And I had worked out that at the end of it in 35 years, had the money, government not been spending like mad on it, on hiring people, which was doing it at about some incredible rate of 7% a year at that time, they would have created 3 times as many jobs as they created in government in the same period of time. And they would have, and point about those jobs is they would have created more income and more jobs beyond.
More jobs, yeah, of course.
So, what we did was we destroyed India in order to feed a bureaucracy.
Does anyone not have a phone?
No, we all have phones.
Compassion. There are 3,000 people living ahead of the Arctic Circle, and there is 6,000 kilometers of telecom lines to be put. So the first compassion was, I want them to have the same telecom access that I have down south in another country. The guy who wrote the paper on mobile telephony was called Radical. Today you take it as granted. It started from compassion. Could anyone imagine that it is doable, undoable? First he raised the issue. He was actually fired. 20 years later, when Nokia was all settled, the guy in San Jose looks at this phone and he says, it's a piece of shit. 6 years later, Nokia doesn't exist, and that guy. What are the limitations of our own minds? What is the level of our own compassion? I only raise questions, I put solutions. Do I think they're going to happen tomorrow? But in raising, in not accepting today, and in propagating to you a computer room which fits a building rather than your palm, I hope I will interest brighter minds than me. I'm a very average mind to take the conflict. I write between you and me, and my publisher said this is a book that should not have been published, or rarely is published. I write Flight to Societal Moksha, and I'll continue. I'll thank the illustrious. I may be in need of a drink. And why do I write Flight to Societal Moksha?
Okay.
So why do I call it Flight to Societal Moksha?
Atul, there are a couple of questions.
And about the transferability of votes, I think some people want to know what that means really. What you said.
The reason is that I grew up being told that to get free from the circle of life and death is the greatest goal in life, moksha. I have come to the conclusion that societal moksha is a greater goal and much more harder to achieve. I like my life, I'm happy to be reborn again, but if I can contribute to be a fair society that is equity-based and has a beautiful life and it gives fair opportunities and natural justice, that is the goal.
Dr. Awad.
Yes, thank you. Atul, thank you very much. This is Dr. Awad. I must compliment you for 2 reasons. One, I didn't read your book, but I am very impressed with the way you put things in context, especially when Rahul have access to every detail of the book that have made it very interesting to read. And I'm sure the editor or the publisher will be able to send me a copy to do it even in Arabic. My point here is I realize from what I have understood from your knowledge on this, which have impressed me a lot, is the democracy in India. The bureaucracy has been playing a major role in Indian democracy. But with the recent government coming in power, the bureaucracy have taken a sideline. Do you think that bureaucracy should be?
Not true.
I will argue with you in a long way on this because I'm sure because the centralization of decisions have made it very difficult for bureaucracy to take decisions in many major issues. So that's what I am trying to understand. The Indian politics for 4 decades living in India,
I think
I
we
can say
should
that.
name our structure. There are brilliant and beautiful people who are employed as bureaucrats. One of the reasons we are not able to progress any dialogue in India is that we objectify it and personalize it.
I'm just asking my questions. I haven't asked my question yet. My question is, the governance, as Bin Khaldun have said, is one of the pillars of democracy, of a stable government anywhere in the world, including India. So how does democracy work with bureaucracy in a good governance? Thank you.
Essentially, it comes down to detail. In our constitution, there is a lack of trust. They play the role of checks and balances. In the American system, they play the role of professional service to take forward a political idea. In the German system, they come in as specialists who do execution. So it also depends on how much is done internally, and after coming into the government system, how much is given back to the society to execute. So, for example, if you give every building to the PWD, or are you only giving it to a bright architect and a bright contractor? So there are no easy answers in that sense. One of the very, very large problems that we have is that our depth of outsourcing back to the citizen is very poor. So I'm not a software guy, I'm not a mathematician. But when I look at this phone and I press it and I know some bright mathematics guy has worked it, why do I press it with a thumb and it comes around? 1800 algorithms go into it. So I don't profess to have so many answers. But what I do know is that this country has enough bright guys to write that algorithm, not for America anymore, but to write that governance algorithm for itself.
Atul, I've heard you answer all the questions, talk about your book, answer Rahul's questions. You talk about radical changes that you want to see in India. And that's fine, but tell me, is one of the radical changes that you think that's going to help India is move to a presidential form of government versus a parliamentary system?
No, not at all.
And why not?
I propose a mixed model in my book, and I think you can elect a leader separately and not, and you can distributive power as you make function. The country's diversity is very large. So I propose a mixed model. It combines the strength of both.
So do you agree with both having a president and a parliament?
Simultaneously, I have actually detailed it. It's a mixed model.
Yeah, I would thank Team Bloomsbury and Team Taj Mahal Hotel, Satyajit, Kunal, Mr. Berry, and Rahul and Atul for making this a very pleasant evening. Thank you so much.